My wife, Lisa, and I have been investing together for almost 13 years now. And over that time, we've learned a huge amount of lessons in terms of investing with your partner. We've gone from Lisa literally wringing my neck to us having a lot more fun with it these days. So here's our top 5 tips if you're thinking about doing it with your partner. Sweet. So what's your number 1 tip for investing with a crazy like me?
Like for us, it works if we split roles. So we kind of sit down and Ben's like, I'm handling this, you need to handle this. And I know sometimes people don't have complementary skill sets, but everything still has to be done. So even if you don't love the part that you've been delegated, I'm sure they have a part they don't love being delegated. But if you split it and then kind of catch up about where you're at with your part, it makes it a lot easier.
You know, I think splitting roles should be split between what you enjoy, but also realistically what you're good at. Now, like it or not, in our relationship, I'm like the analytical, pain in the ass, nitpicky one that sort of focuses on all the small stuff. So when we're buying, I focus on the strategy, finding the right market, finding the right property, negotiating the right price. And then all of that super fun due diligence stuff as we go through with solicitors, accountants, town planners, builders, etc. And then when we get to the place where we're happy with the property and it's settled, then Lisa sort of takes over. And what are the things that you do?
If we're building, then I go through with the builder and map out the floor plan, do all the color selections and all that kind of stuff really. But even before that, I think probably you are more like you find properties that financially makes sense. And then I'm like, oh, do we want this property? I get the final say in a way.
100%. I think the 4 or 5 best properties that we've bought have been a combination of we are looking for another investment or another home, but realistically it's been a lot of that intuition from you going, that doesn't quite feel right or that does.
Yeah, and we both have to love it for us to buy it. It's not like Ben's like, we're doing it, too bad. Yeah.
There have been a few times actually where we have, done that, where you've sent me a property and you're like, we're buying this.
Yeah.
Or the reverse of that where I'm like, hey, I'm just driving back from Brizzy. Just want to let you know I've just bought a place. We'll sort it out when we get home. So that's happened. But these days it's more strategic. What does the next property look like? What is the plan for that property? What is it going to do for our future? And most importantly now, do we actually need it, or is it just a habit that we've got of buying stuff and doing projects?
Yeah, it's a weird addiction property.
Yeah. So that sort of takes us into the second idea, which is having a bit of a vision for our lives, but also a vision and a plan for the properties that we buy.
Sorry. An example of that is we were living in a house. We had 2 really small little kids and we found out I was pregnant again, and our backyard was on the canals, but it had a footpath in front of it. So I never really felt comfortable with the kids playing out the back with me not watching them, which when you have a newborn baby, you can't be there. So I was just like, I want to move to somewhere that's secure. And then Ben was like, I want this, I want to be walking distance to the beach or whatever. So we kind of sat down together and wrote a plan, a checklist of all these things that we both wanted out of our next house. And we were like, fine, if it takes 6 months, a year, a week, we'll just wait until that right property comes up. And literally the next week?
Yeah.
I was like, I found it. He's like, you have not. I got it. I found it.
Yeah.
And we moved pretty quickly.
And I was doing the standard me thing, because I don't like getting into debt. And normally the analytical partner in your relationship should be having a laugh at this because, debt feels uncomfortable for me. Progress forward feels so natural, but also super uncomfortable. And I was a hard no to that property for the first few days. Yeah, and then we went through it. I'm like, oh, this is really nice. And then I got stuck negotiating with the agent over, $10,000 or $20,000 for a few days because he was very much like me. He was just foot in the sand, knew that we'd pay it. And I was like, I still, as an investor, want to pick a bit up on the way in.
Yeah, it was $2,000. I think you both got in a headlock at $2,000, and I was pregnant and emotional and really attached to this house. And I was just I'm not losing this house over $2,000, Ben.
Yeah. So obviously as a partnership that does 2 things, we buy our own homes to live in, which are just fully set up for our family that are very emotional. Yeah. And then we do investing. And, that's more what we do when it's for us. When it's investment wise though, metro markets, houses, big blocks, quality streets, quiet streets, like all of the fundamentals that we talk about online. And I do rip through the data, whether we're doing it for ourselves or as an investment as well. I think the third part of a successful partnership, where obviously you're family, but you're also investing together and sort of in like a business relationship as well, is getting on the same page financially, or at least that's what you wrote. So what do you mean by that?
Well, I know it sounds really like simple, but you have to know your overheads of what your like living cost is and also what like you're spending, because you don't want to get in over your head with the property, because then you're just drowning and everyone's stressed, and you know, it's not supposed to be like that. So I think having a clear, you know, goal of like what you want, and if you can afford to do that and if you can't, like, is so important, and make sure you're both on the same page with it, because it can't be one person holds all the money and does all the structure and stuff like that. Like, it's really a combined effort to do that, because you both have to be on the same page, because it is a lot of money.
Without a doubt. Like, I think one of the best pieces of advice that we got really young from your dad and also Michael was have a spreadsheet and look at your life realistically. So what is the income coming in from both of us? What are the expenses going out that are fixed, that are every single week? And then within those expenses, what can we reduce? We used to have like more than $300 a month in phone plans. Now we're with Audi Mobile, and I think the 3 phones are like $60 a month. So just little things like that along the way that have helped. And then getting on the same page. Like, we've had years where we've just gone, we're not buying this year. We can sort of, you know, take a bit of the edge off and just really enjoy ourselves. And then we've had other times where it's like, shit, we just bought like a really expensive home to live in, and let's just cut our expenses and simplify our life for the next 6 months just to get a bit more of a buffer in place and get to feel a bit more comfortable.
Yeah, and be realistic with it. Like, there's times where you have to knuckle down more because you're saving for that deposit, but you also want to make sure that you're not living as well. Like, we've had friends who have just really knuckled down and every cent's gone to their goal, and which is so amazing. But for us, like, we also want lifestyle.
It's always lifestyle first, right?
Yeah.
Like, all the way along this journey, whether we had $50 a week left over or $5,000 a week left over, like, it has always been about just enjoying the journey, simple things or sometimes more extravagant things. Like, we went through a period where we were all about just simple caravanning, and then we wanted to get into Airbnb. So we had that year where we just booked Airbnb everywhere and spent a fortune.
Research.
But yeah, it's been cool, like the ebbs and flows. And just like the last thing that, you know, I wanted to add is, like, I grew up in a household where there was massive financial stress for a little while till I was about 10, 12, 13. And I made a commitment to, like, I don't want to fight about money. I don't want to put myself into that much of a vulnerable position that it just scares me. Yeah. And there has been times where we've gone all in. I would never do it again now, but at the stage of life we're at, it worked. But, you know, I think comfort and like staying at like a steady pace over 15 to 20 years is better than like some of the dumb shit we might have done in the first few years when we're just trying to go nuts. So number 4, I've just realized we've kind of covered, which is not putting yourself or your family under too much pressure. But number 5 is so important to us. And I think it should be important if you're investing with your partner at any stage of your journey. And that is just enjoying the journey and making the most of it and celebrating the little wins along the way. So how do you feel like we've gone with that?
I mean, we're up and down with it for sure. Like, when you're in it, it's so hectic. And then like when everything settles and it's finally done, you really have to like stop and be like, oh my God, we did it. You know, like crack the champagne, like really celebrate it. Because yeah, when you're in it, it's just like a blur, isn't it? It's just like to-do lists, and we have to do this and we have to get this signed, and you know, like it's a lot.
It's hectic, because if we think about 2022, we had a project on the Sunshine Coast where we sort of bought this really cute little house near the beach, and we want to Airbnb it. And buying it was super fun. Going through the settlement process is always stressful with the paperwork and the banks. And then it was kind of like, shit, like we want to do a big reno. And that reno was like almost 9 months.
Yeah, but also like trades were really hard to get, and the cost of materials went up and they were hard to get. So like, I think initially we put a really tight time frame on it, and then we started and we were like, oh, that's not happening. Like, as much as we would love it to. The pool was kind of the longest part for us.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I remember sort of thinking halfway through, wow, we've got like a lot to do, and we're really listing it out at that point. And then we got closer to the end, and I was spending sort of every Thursday or Friday doing landscaping stuff, and you were spending all of that time just bringing it together.
Yeah.
And I remember like the day that I finished the last bit and blew everything off and hosed it all down, I'm like, I sent you a text, I'm like, I want to live here now. Like, and it was like everything was gone.
I was like, it was like a 3-bedroom little not living here. But we decided we're going to book it for our school holidays and like enjoy it, which is amazing.
But no, it's cool. Like, I suppose investing with your partner is a journey. There's so many fun parts to it. There's plenty of ups and downs as well. But like you've said before, like, I think it definitely feels like it's made us stronger. Yeah. The great thing about our relationship is we know that we don't see eye to eye on many things, and we're constantly like challenging each other and growing, but we've learned to hear each other's side better and understand the working style of the other person, and, you know, create a good partnership that I don't think either of us could execute on our own.
I guess at the end of the day, just make sure you're still having time for each other, and it's not just like you catch up and it's all about like your routine and what you have to do and what needs to be done tomorrow. Like, you know, just take those moments, just let it go for a nice dinner, and like, you know, just, it doesn't all have to be about property or the serious stuff in life.
You know, I think for a long time we were like obsessively focusing about project to project to project, and now it's more like, if we're doing a project, let's catch up for an hour on a Friday at this time, and just sort of like treat it more like we talk about that then. Because projects and investing can just blend into every single part of your life. And there's been 10 years where I just, you know, just loaded all of the stuff that I wanted to talk about, or all of my fears and stuff onto you. Yeah. And I think it can become really blurry. And so I think having clear lines, separation, like generally knowing that one partner in the relationship is always super excited about it. Like, I could always see where we're at now for the last 10, 12 years. And I'm like, I believe that if we invest, we'll end up here and we'll get choices, and we'll be able to go to our kids' sport and take school holidays off and take 6 weeks off over Christmas. But it's fucking hard to like live in that distant future when like the day-to-day is so intense on its own. And I think we've found like a better balance as we've gone further into this journey of like how to separate what we do with property from who we are.
Yeah.
And the results that we achieve through that with our identities. And now it's just more like, you know, life is seriously just a gift, and we're just on the journey and trying to enjoy it.
Yeah. And we're having a bit of a break at the moment from investing, which is nice. And I think it's broken that cycle a bit as well, because it can be like, you know, 9 months of renovating and buying. Like, that's, you know, a very long time to be obsessive about that one thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
People both exhausted, and we're just like, let's just focus on paying off debt this year, getting our property structured right, and turning that like what I would now call like property business, which is the small number of properties we own, into like as automated as possible. And now that's done, I don't think about it, do you? Like, I really don't even think about our properties outside of when one of the banks asks us for some info.
Yeah, which I think is the reward. It's the reward for knuckling down and getting all the stuff done, that now we just get to like enjoy it.
100%.
Yeah.
No, thanks, babe. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I know I'm a pest, and I'm sorry for all the stuff we've gone through, but I've loved it. Yeah. And like, I'm so grateful. And, you know, our home is a result of that hard work as well. So it's been awesome.
Yeah.
Woo! That's a wrap. That's a wrap.
Getting cool, bro. Yeah.
Oh, sweaty. So sweaty. Oh, that's good. That's so nice. Oh.